you're changing the revenue forecast, you become undeniable.
Let me tell you. So when I was in my 20s navigating the newsroom at CNN, I worked on a show with 5 white hosts. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever thought, isn't it weird to have 5 white hosts talk about this? But to them, this was like what it was. It was par for the course. And this was the early 2000s, maybe 2001, 2002. And Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, was getting inducted in the Arkansas Hall of Fame. The African American Arkansas Hall of Fame. And so all the white hosts just thought this was hilarious. And I did too, but for different reasons. We were laughing for very different reasons. And they were sitting around talking about it. It was our pre-show meeting. All the producers were white. All the hosts were white. And then there's me. And they're saying, can you guys believe Bill Clinton's getting inducted into the Black Hall of Fame in Arkansas? And one of the columnists, who was one of the hosts, said, but wait, guys, here's the funnier part. Guess who he's getting inducted with? Some guy named Al Green.
Oh, my God.
And they all burst out laughing.
What?
And this guy said, I'll give anybody here $100 if you can name one song by Al Green.
I hope he took
I ain't saying nothing. No, absolutely. I ain't saying nothing. I'm going to tell you why. As they all laughed, and they constantly treated me like I was an idiot, like I was the diversity hire, and because they knew like Beltway politics in a way. It was a white space, so of course you can navigate it better than I do as a young Black woman. I didn't say anything because they literally asked me, Tiffany, can you name one song by Al Green? And I said no and walked away, and I'll tell you why. Because the things that they knew, they were 40, 30 years my senior. The things that they knew I would learn. But I did not think I needed to defend a legend, Al Green, to these 5 old white folks who were dismissing him, and somebody whose falsetto, and this is a scientific fact, you can get pregnant by his falsetto just by listening to Al Green. I'm not going to defend this man to these people. And it's like all the things y'all don't know, I will learn. But y'all have gone your whole miserable life without ever hearing Al Green's falsetto, and you laughing at him. So I let it go because I just thought, y'all are whack, not him. I don't need to defend him. But the bigger point I'm making, these were the people who were making decisions about what needed to go on air, about what was worthy, about who was a viable candidate when they were covering politics, presidential elections, congressional elections, about what guests made sense to come on the show and have these discussions.
History
and
building.
They literally were laughing at a legend being inducted alongside President Bill Clinton. It was just
and Bill
egregious.
Clinton was probably happy. He's like,
right.
what?
He probably got
Bill
all
Clinton
the
was
photos.
honored.
What?
Bill
Yeah.
Clinton was honored. He was up there singing along, snapping his fingers,
Okay,
I'd
of
imagine.
course.
Right.
Of course.
So it's just exhausting dealing with that kind of thing. And I wonder, does that still exist? Because I do think newsrooms, we have a long way to go, but newsrooms are a lot more diverse than they were since I was navigating them that long ago.
I think it's relative. I think it depends one newsroom to the other because there's a lot more Black people or people of color in general coming into newsrooms, but you also have to look at the retention rate and the attrition and how other they feel once they're brought in and whether they're explicitly treated like that diversity hire or not. I'll give you an example. When I first started at NPR Music, it was in 2017 when Nielsen first reported that hip-hop and R&B was the most consumed genre in America. Now, me, covering hip-hop and R&B for like 6-7 years at that point, you didn't need to tell me that, but it was news to all these other people. And when I first started in the music department, I was one of 3 Black people, and I was the only Black woman. So anytime something happened in hip-hop or R&B, if it was about Ari Lennox or if it was about Meek Mill, it'd be like, it'd be the head turn in the meeting to me. And when you're telling that story about Al Green, I'm reminded of one of the first big out-of-the-park pieces I penned for NPR Music was about the marketing and the buying power of Cardi B. Because when I walked in to that pitch meeting, they didn't know who Cardi B was.
Wow.
And in the world we live in right now, you'd have to be under a rock. Like, it's a fallacy to say you wouldn't know who Cardi B is and her buying power, her selling power. But this is before Bodak Yellow. This is before her debut album, when she was very much just a cultural figure within us. Like, we knew who she was on the internet. We knew what Gangsta Bitch Music 2 was doing in the streets of New York and stuff like that. And so me pitching Cardi B and her buying power pegged to her debut album, this was like it was like a wake-up call to them of this whole other world that they didn't know about, and they're, granted, I pitched a lot of other things before I got that one through. I think we should talk about pitching and editors and that ceiling of power that comes into it. But in getting that first piece out and it going crazy at getting page views, because, you know, they care about the page views. They care about the ad dollars that go into it. Getting that, it was a point of validation for me, because I'm like, oh, actually, to the point, I can learn all the stuff you're talking about, but there's some things that you're never gonna know, and I'm truly gonna be the expert in, that I can assert in this place that you can never take away from me. And that's the voice, and that's why everything I put out now, I know the audience that I'm speaking to, and I know my target demographic, and I know what my byline does and who I speak to and who I speak for with it. So that's why it was a moment that I was like, oh, okay, let me keep my chin up in here. Let me keep my foot on next up in here.
Yeah. Now, you were on the corporate side, Michelle. Do you remember, like, specific content that maybe networks were not as open to, like, major stories that maybe they didn't?
Well, so, you know, interesting story. The way that I became an entrepreneur is I was at CNN, and I was in the lunchroom, and I see Soledad O'Brien, and she just finished making Black in America. She made Gary and Tony Have a Baby, and she made something else, right? And so I was like, Soledad, you know, we need to be pitching, we need to be selling what you're making, because there's such great stories, and I believe that they're going to have a lot of traction. So at the end of the day, we're not selling content, we're selling audiences. And so, like you said, if we can bring in audiences, then we're winning, because now we're, you know, fulfilling all of these advertising deals. So everyone out there watching, understand that the backbone for every media company, Instagram, Facebook, is content and getting people to come and engage with it. So I said, Soledad, I said, yo, let me create a department. All I'm gonna do is sell your stuff. I was like, I think I can make some money. So I built this department called CNN Advantage. People's like, no, Michelle, don't tie yourself to multicultural, it's crazy. And I literally brought in millions of incremental dollars by partnering with some of the biggest brands around those stories, because it was so unique and amazing. And we had this little business for a couple years until, you know, I decided to spread my wings, and that's when I went to BET. So
what's the difference, you think, working in predominantly white spaces and predominantly Black? Because both, I mean, I think people romanticize working in, like, all Black spaces, and I think, to me, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in another. Like, both have their challenges.